Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mia Sims Washington. Welcome to this special Juneteenth edition of Ask a Boss with Ivy McGregor. Named in honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Walker's legacy was created with the mission to cultivate an ecosystem of access designed to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's legacy by joining us online at www.walkerslegacy.com. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you to the Minority Business Development Agency for their continued partnership in helping make Ask a Boss possible. As an organization dedicated to uplifting women of color, we recognize our duty to discuss sensitive topics in the minority community. This Juneteenth edition of Ask a Boss will reflect on the current social and political climate from the perspectives of two amazing Black women. First, we have Natalie Madeira-Cofield, who is the founder of Walker's Legacy, an organization she created to inspire, equip, and empower professional and enterprising women. Natalie began her career working 3 jobs in high school and started her first company at the age of 26, growing to become a 3-time CEO by the age of 30. A millennial that found inspiration at the nexus of business, community, and politics, Natalie has carved a niche for herself as a serial entrepreneur, advocate, and speaker on all things startup and diversity. As an advocate, Natalie has served as the youngest person to testify before the U.S. Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship and authored The Pursuit of Entrepreneurship, a guide for African American entrepreneurs. Her work has been featured on CNN, New York Times, Fast Company, Forbes, Business Insider, Black Enterprise, Essence, Ebony, among others. Today, Natalie is joined by social impact leader Ivy McGregor, who is no stranger to philanthropy. Her work efforts include Hurricane Harvey relief initiatives and clean water donations for Flint, Michigan, and Burundi, Africa. Ivy is the CEO and chief architect of Ivy Inc., a strategic consulting firm offering solutions to help individuals and organizations evolve, expand, and uncover cutting-edge social impact strategies. Additionally, Ivy is an advisor and board member for the South African Fellowship, National Council of Women and Global Citizens, and as a native of Minneapolis, the senseless murder of George Floyd hits close to home. Ivy attended the final memorial service of George Floyd and delivered a touching speech to Floyd's friends and family. Please listen to the closing remarks from her speech before we begin this timely conversation with these two incredible women. Just one moment, we will play this again so you can actually hear her.
Of Praise Church, we hope that the words that have been spoken and the words that have been written will bring you comfort in the days to come. And while the world has been shaken and awakened by 3 words that your dearly beloved George Floyd spoke, I leave with you 1 word, his final word, which was breathe. And breathe is not passive, no sir, no ma'am. Breathe is active. Breathe is inhale and exhale. Breathe is to be alive. And so we stay with this family. As you breathe, we breathe with you. God bless you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ivy. So excited to have you. Mia, thank you so much for that introduction. Ivy, are you with us?
I am here. How are you?
I'm doing good, floating through the Walker's Legacy vortex currently. So first off, happy Juneteenth to you, Ivy. How are you doing? How are you holding up amidst all that is transpiring with COVID right now?
Very good. First off, thank you so much, Natalie, for having me. It's my honor, certainly, to spend a portion of my Juneteenth with you and your audience. Thank you for all that you're doing with Walker Legacy. I am doing well. Thank you. It's been quite a transition, I think, for all of us. It's been quite the new space, but I think it has, we have all recognized that it's pulled a strength out of us that many of us rarely tap into. It's pulled out creativity, sensitivity for things that we are often, that are often forgotten, like family and friends and the power of that connectivity time. It's been very retrospective, introspective, and so I've been really well. I've had the time to spend a lot of time with my family, so I've been really well. So that's COVID, and then leading up to, you know, the recent civil unrest and things that we've seen in the news. I think the strength of having spent so much time during COVID with family almost prepared me for the emotional changes that would happen with regards to George Floyd and so much else that is happening. So thanks to God, I am really doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
You know, very similar. I'm holding up. I spent a lot of time with my family. That has really helped. I think this is a inflection point for the work that both of us do to support our community. And it's a moment where we have to really rise into our leadership roles, rise to continue to keep doing the work. I know that we get tired and that it affects us as well. But this isn't a moment for either one of us or anyone on the call to stop what we've been doing so much and committed our lives to. And speaking of that, Ivy, I love to, I mean, so much of what your body of work has been focused on is service to community.
That's right.
Engagement with community, supporting community. And there are a number of women of all ages who are very much so interested now and had been before in doing more and building a lifestyle around how to do good and do good while doing good. So I'd love if you could share with us a little bit about how you got your start in this space, what inspired you, and you know, what you're doing now.
Awesome. Thank you again for the opportunity to share. And you know, I tell this story to people all the time because they're so fascinated with how you got started. But it really started within my home. When I look at it, both of my parents were serial entrepreneurs. My mother, a professional woman, but later when their marriage ended, my mother found herself raising 5 children alone. And we came from very, very meager beginnings, Natalie. And I share that as well because oftentimes people look at where you are today and are not reminiscent of where we've come from. And so very, very meager beginnings, projects, food stamps, Section 8 housing, that good government cheese, that's where we came from. But that was not the end. That was not the end stop. And so for me, I saw my mother give and help other women. For example, my mother did hair for years. And so on Saturdays, she'd have women in the community that couldn't afford to go to the beauty shop. She'd have them in and she'd be pressing that hair. And our house smelled like a beauty shop all day on Saturdays. That was my mother's service to her community, right? Then I saw my mother later in life, things were better. She had a professional career. And I saw my mother go back to the same organization that assisted us with welfare. My mother then went back and was a mentor to young women, young mothers that were raising children alone. So I'd see my mom, you know, once or twice a week have these meetings, and I didn't understand the meetings, and I would go with her, and she'd literally be in round tables mentoring other young mothers, and letting them know things are going to get better, and this is how you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going, and you take care of your kids and keep your house clean. So I saw my mother embody the work that I do today. Further, I saw my mother in a professional tenure serve on boards. So now she's a professional woman working at US Bank, and she's a part of their civic board that actually disperse funds to community programs. And my mother was a part of that. So when I look at my life, it was just one simple request of God that I had, which was simply be kind enough to me that I can be good enough to my mom. That was it. I didn't know about this space called philanthropy because honestly, it was part of our family's DNA. Somebody helps you, you help them. Even when they don't help you, you have more than enough, then you have enough to give to someone else. So service and philanthropy and impact was a part of how we were raised. It was always the right thing to do. And we were taught you do right even when everyone else is doing wrong. You do right when other people don't even call it dope or hot or sexy or that's not, or that's whack. You still do the right thing. And so fast forward to my life, you know, I had desires to work in business, and I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but much like yourself, Natalie, I knew early on that there was a grace on my life that I would reach the world and help those people that I'd reach, help them change the world. And so I didn't know this fancy name for it. So it was graced with great jobs, but I knew even amidst making great money, that there was always something more. So I'd have a 9 to 5 and I'd leave work and I'd be involved in some sort of social program, mentoring young people, much like my mother, or doing some sort of community work, much like my mother. And so it evolved into something else. So I started my own business. And so in tandem with working a corporate job, I always have had Ivy Inc., which helps support individuals and help create and curate social impact programs. And so I've always done this on the side, if you will. And later in years, you know, met up with people who wanted me to come on board to help them advance their social impact, but have always been, I'd say, a part of my calling, a part of my vocation to help other people. And I'll say this and I'll close, that it's always been bigger than money, right? Like a lot of people look at charity as what someone gives, or they look at philanthropy as the big people who have big money. But I've always looked at it as the everyday people who are empowered to use their influence, to use their voice, and to use their platforms where they are to make a change. And so that's been what I've been doing for the past 20 some years. And God has graced me to land on some incredible stages. But it's been just out of the goodness of my heart to make things better for my mother. And from that has spawned all of this.
Awesome. I absolutely love it. While you were talking, one, it really resonated with me about your mom. And when I was younger, my mother would make me read her business plans, and I hate to do that. But I realized today that what she was doing for me was preparing me for entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
So there's always someone who inspires you, whether it be your mother, your father, someone in the community, somebody that leaves some inspiration for you. And then also, you know, just to hear the passion for which you speak about community service and engagement and being a woman of her community. It reminds me of some research that Walker's Legacy did with the Small Business Administration, where we talked about the fact that Black women are typically and have historically been motivated to entrepreneurship to do good for their community. And so that's not a new phenomenon for us. We have new words and new language for it around social innovation, social this, and philanthropy. But we were creating companies, very much so like you're creating, like you've created yours, to solve for a problem that we identified in our community.
That's right.
So I'd love to ask you, maybe what one of the most impactful projects that you've worked on has been for you and why?
That's so good. There are so many that come to mind, and I hope my sharing inspires someone to really know that we all have the ability to use our influence to make a difference right where you are with your circle of influence. And I will say, Natalie, honestly, I think it's been right here during COVID, have been very, very impactful for me personally. So I'll talk about this. When COVID happened back in March and we were told that we needed to shelter in place, I was so touched and moved by the need that it created for so many people. So again, I reached back to my upbringings, being raised in a single parent home. I thought of single mothers that are now challenged with all of their children being in the home. And for me, I was always that sick child. So if I got a cold, it always turned to bronchitis. If it turned to bronchitis, it turned to upper respiratory infection. So my mother always had to take me to ER and get medicines. And so I thought about those circumstances that people were in because of COVID. So I corralled my team. I have a mentorship community that we affectionately call SOARs, because I believe that people who are committed to service are destined to soar. And so we call them SOARs. So I shared with them, let's help other people right where we are. So we adopted 3 hospitals in New York, Mount Sinai, Sloan Kettering, and Jacobi Hospital. And we fed the entire medical staff at each of these hospitals because we saw these medical teams working around the clock. We did that. Still, I'm saying there's more we can do. Now, we didn't ourselves, right? So our team put together a pool of money and we gave those funds to a local restaurant to help keep them in business. And the restaurant then delivered hot meals to these 3 hospitals. Well, still I'm thinking, Natalie, there's still more that we can do, right? So then I'm like, okay, I look at myself. I was raised in a single parent home. I know what it's like for a mother to now have all of these different tasks. She's got to do schoolwork, homework, all of these different things for all of the kids that don't now have after school classes. And so I said, let's help single mothers. Again, we pulled resources together and we provided Cash App to single mothers and to grandmothers raising their children, right? Well, Natalie, I said, there's more we can do. So we had 100 families in New York, and we purchased grocery gift cards because the grocery store is hurting as well. So we purchased 100 grocery store gift cards, gave those gift cards to 100 families so that now they can have fresh produce. All right, it doesn't end there, Natalie. I said, there's still more people. So we thought about our seniors who are homebound, right? So we partnered with a local organization and had hot meals delivered to an entire senior housing community so that they didn't have to risk going out in the midst of when COVID was at its peak in New York. Additionally, because we've become such this virtual community, I hosted 4 virtual town halls. The first one was with Congresswoman Jayapal in Seattle, and we had women on the front line. So that discussion, you should have been a part of that, but we had women on the front line. That was one discussion. Then we hosted Bishop T.D. Jakes and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and my friend at Columbia Hospital, Dr. Olajide Williams, and we hosted leaders on the front line, right? And then we hosted, because we're hearing about all of the mental stress that COVID and being quarantined is causing people. So we hosted a conversation on mental wellness during the month of May, and we hosted Michelle Williams, Yvette Noel Schur, and Dan Gillison, who is the CEO and president of NAMI. And recently we hosted Dr. Vincent Hayden, who is the CEO of Turning Point, and had a discussion on chemical dependency, because what studies have proven is that when you have these type of trauma things happen in the world, people lean on something. Some of us lean on faith, some of us lean on family, and some lean on foreign substances. And so there can always be the rise of chemical dependency. And so we hosted these very frank discussion conversations where people were able to ask questions, and we pointed them to direction to get help. But we didn't only point them to help. I believe, to everybody watching, we are the help. A couple of years ago, I did my first TEDx, and the title is You Are an Answer. And I firmly believe that, and it may have even been prophetic now when I think about the times that right? But we are an answer. And so I embodied that during COVID. And I think, to your question, that is probably one of my most celebrated, because there was no budget for this, right? There was no big project plan for it. It was simply identifying a need, corralling those people for which I have influence, and coming together to help meet a need. And we did that in a robust way. And I have to say, with all that's happening, that is most near and dear to my heart, because, again, there was no budget. It's a different conversation when you've got $1 million budget to do X, Y, Z. But when there's no budget, but you identify a need and you tell 3 friends, let's help the seniors, and 3 friends turns to 1,500 people that can contribute $5, $10, $7. You do that as well. So that's probably something that I'm really proud about.
I love that. I love it. A couple of things. We both were very sickly young people, apparently.
Wow.
I used to always have to research in the encyclopedia what I had when I was young. So I took note of that. I love the work that you are doing around working with single moms. Walker's Legacy, through our nonprofit arm, actually has a program called Moms Who Enterprise, which teaches moms about financial literacy and entrepreneurship. It's a 9-week program, and we've graduated nearly 200 mothers through that program across the country, and we continue to keep doing that. So we'd love to share with you more about that. But in general, what I took away from what you talked about in your answer to that is, one, an idea that starts very small has the potential to grow and expand. The more that you grow and expand the coalition, the people that you are engaging, the ask for support, your desire to be of assistance, you'd be surprised how many people will show up for you when you're interested in showing up for others.
For others. And Natalie, let me jump in real quick, because I tell the team that I give influence to is that money follows, guess what? The movement.
Yeah.
So as you are moving, people aren't just coming and pouring support and pouring, money or any form of support with you standing still. They're not. Yeah. They are sitting back watching you move and watching you take little become much. And that's what inspires and encourages people to come along and support and be a voice of advocacy, to be aligned with your initiative or program. Somebody write that down. Money follows the movement.
I love it, because especially now that we're in this time where money can be challenging to get access to, right? It doesn't mean that you can't still do something good for your community. And I love that we're doing this conversation on Juneteenth, because this is, as they say, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? And so it is our obligation to be a part of our community and to do things for community, of all communities, period. Like that's our obligation as a citizen of humanity, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to have $1 million budget, which you just mentioned, Ivy. It means that you just need to have $1 million heart, and that costs you nothing.
That's right.
So, so I love that, because I as I'm thinking about the career path for people who are on the call with us today and watching us, there is the corporate philanthropy and the corporate CEO of a nonprofit route. We interviewed the CEO of the Girl Scouts USA, phenomenal woman, Sylvia Acevedo, and she talked about her path. there is also the social entrepreneurial path for which you've taken, right? Where you're able to build a business that is socially rooted around community engagement, but not be in the role of being the CEO of a large nonprofit organization. You're the CEO of your organization. And so I just want to have people have the entire spectrum of ways in which they can both make a living as well as a lifestyle by giving back.
Right. And let me add to that quickly. So I sat in both seats as you have as well, right? So I've worked a corporate job and currently do an executive of a company, and then I am the CEO of my own company. And I get a lot of people, Natalie, who ask me, who say this, and they, oh, I'm getting ready to quit my job. And I go, why? And they go, because I want to do what you do. And I'm said, well, the first thing you can do if you're going to do what I do is not quit your job. It's to make an impact where you are, right? So to everyone that's on this call, social impact work has become sexy now, right? It's the thing, you know, because everybody's doing it. The key to it is to observe, where are you, right? So if you're a part of a corporate organization or a nonprofit, to determine where is there a need, not just a need inside of your organization, but to determine where is there a need in the world. And so that's why I encourage people to read. It's great to read the Bible and read novels, but you need to pick up that newspaper and read the newspaper to understand what's happening in our ecosystem, right? What is happening with the dollar? What's happening in Asia, in other parts of the world that so influence what is happening here, right? What's happening in China? And be astute and informed and educated about these processes. And it's critically important that as you're informed, that you're able to identify, here's a gap. And oh, this dream or vision or idea that I had, it meets that gap. That's how we become an answer. When we identify, you know, I am a student, a daughter of Bishop Jakes, and he often says this. He said, we should be busy about finding our Lazarus and raising them. Find the thing that's dead, that's stinky, that nobody wants to deal with. Find that thing and raise it. And so many people are running to the same place and wondering why it's difficult to get funding. Everybody doing the same thing. And again, we can all be in this space of social impact, but let's look when we turn in terms of finding a need. Let's identify, let's talk about women. So with women, where is there a need? For me, I wanted to target women that look like my mother. I am sensitive to single mothers. So that became the space that I wanted to fill, right? For others, it may be parents that have sick children. Find that thing that resonates with you and that you are passionate about if there's no money coming in, and find the need, and then attach to that need, what is a strategy, a simple solution? It doesn't have to change the world today, but if we're using our influence and our impact in that direction, people can make impact working a corporate job, or if you are doing social impact as your 9 to 5. You can make an impact where you are. You don't have to quit your job. You can make an impact. You know, I've seen people go to their executives at their company and say, hey, you know, on Fridays, can we have a contribution can? Well, what's the can for? You know, if anyone comes up and you know, they have a sick child and their medical bills aren't covered under our insurance, we can send them the can of help, you know, and it's simple things. And companies go, sure, let's try it. People have suggested simple things like a suggestion box. And now every company in America has a suggestion box. So I encourage the people that are tuned in to not just look at change as over there or being there, but look at change right where I am.
What do they say? The grass grows where you water it?
Where you water it.
You're always looking at your neighbor's yard. You'll never have the time to water your own.
Absolutely.
And I love that you're saying you can create the type of change that you're looking for within the structure of your company, right? So for those who are joining us from corporate America, who may, you know, even be feeling so wound up from what's going on, understandably,
Yep.
that it's kind of like, I want to get out of here. Well, the truth is that you need people everywhere, right? So we need our successful corporate America sisters. We don't need you to leave. We need you to be there. We need you to effectuate change from the inside out of that organization. We need women like Ivy who are on the front lines of creating social impact movements across the nation. We need women in business. We need women across the entire spectrum. And so there is an opportunity to kind of create the change that you'd like to see. Ivy, I'm going to remind everybody who's joining us, if you have any questions for Ivy, to please write them in the Q&A section, and I will try to get to them if I can. We have about 10 minutes left of Ivy's time. We want to make sure she can get everywhere she needs to be today because she is a busy woman, and we see why. Ivy, I want to ask you, my last question is really kind of going to revolve around being in Minneapolis,
Sure.
speaking at George Floyd's funeral, thinking about this in the context of Juneteenth. You know, what was a big takeaway that you took from that personally? Was there something that being there motivated you to want to do, a cause to take up, a moment to seize around how you could continue to keep making an impact across the country?
Wow, thank you. So for clarity, Minneapolis is where I was born. So this whole George Floyd crises hit home, because to see places where I grew up burned down to the ground was utter shocking. It's not the city that I grew up in, so that's one. But then to be in Houston, where I lived for 9 years, and so call that my second home, to see the final services of George Floyd there, and to be a part of something that I think will forever be history, was very moving for me. So when we start from Minneapolis, I think if we're very candid, Natalie, you don't have to be Black or white to look at the video of George Floyd and care. All you have to be is human, right? And I think the reason we've seen such a revolt, such a revolution in our country, not just in these United States of America, but in the world, is because everyone came to one central place. What's that place? The place of humanity. So what continues to resonate with me is the power of connectivity when humanity unites. That's what continues to reverberate from Minneapolis to seeing, and God knows I hated to see, you know, all of the civil unrest. But on the other hand, Natalie, it was beautiful to see white sisters, yellow sisters, brown sisters, and brothers of all browns, hues come together around one cause: justice. Then when you fast forward to Houston, again, my involvement, I had no aspirations to do anything other than to be support to my spiritual father, Pastor Wright, and to the family and the young lady that I mentor, who is a part of the family, and that was it. But to be asked to share the acknowledgements and resolutions and to have words is something that I'll never forget. But beyond that moment, shockingly, what stuck with me was there's now, Natalie, a greater sense of responsibility and urgency. And I am a person moved passionately by what I do, but there's this greater sense, you know, being a part of that. From Minneapolis, there were several organizations on the ground that, you know, literally had nothing to turn to. I'm gracious for the influence that God has given me, where I was able to influence a considerable amount of financial donations that went to these local organizations in Minneapolis. And again, honored to be a part of the George Floyd family and service in that historic moment. But what resonates with me most today was being in that motorcade, leaving the church, going to the gravesite, and seeing the thousands of people, not along the street, Natalie, along the highway, that were literally waving and saying George Floyd's name. What resonates with me most, and I get goosebumps, is the power of humanity coming together in unity. That is what resonates with me most. And the greater call, the greater weight of responsibility that now lies with me to think even more broadly, to think even more creatively and collaboratively on what I can do to help continue to shape our world and to inspire other change makers to do it, daggone it, do it, because now is the time.
Ooh, I love it, Ivy. I love it. Thank you. You are our Juneteenth speaker. You are motivating me and motivating all who are watching. We have a question from Margot McClinton Stoglin. What would you tell someone who wants to work in a foundation?
So I would tell someone who wants to work in a foundation to do their due diligence on why they want to work in a foundation first, and then to do their research. I often tell people that I mentor, write this down: research makes you relevant. Research makes you relevant. So you may want to work in a foundation based upon information that you had 10 years ago. Foundations today are very different. So I'd say start with this introspective query within yourself to determine why you want to work in a foundation. And then beyond that, to determine what is the foundation that meets at the intersection of what is your passion, and understand what you bring to the table and how you are able to help influence change in that foundation or anywhere in the world. That's what I would tell someone.
Love it. Well, Ivy, I want to make sure that we have you on your proper schedule. I want to thank you so much for joining us for Ask a Boss here today, produced by Walker's Legacy, where we bring some of the nation's most foremost thought leaders and industry leaders to talk about their careers, talk about their business, and to talk about their personal and professional journey. Ivy, I am very inspired, and I know all that have watched are very inspired as well. We appreciate all that you are doing for our community. We want to wish you the happiest of Juneteenth, taking joy in us being able to do what we do during this time. So it is okay to be happy on Juneteenth.
Absolutely. I think we should be smiling. I think we should be celebrating. I think we should
celebrating
be together. It should be a party.
It should be a party, and in Texas, it always is. So I used to live in Austin, and it was always a very good time and a remembrance of who we are, where we've come from, and what we need to do to continue the legacy that has been left with us. For all who've joined us, you can learn more about Walker's Legacy at www.walkerslegacy.com. Again, Ivy, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.